Hi, I'm Nikki Munitz, and this is my podcast, Come to Mind. I'm super excited about my guest today, Lindiwe Hani, and the theme that we are talking about today is all about reconciliation, and I couldn't think of a more perfect guest for this. Hi.
Hey, Nick.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good. So I think for just this purpose, can you introduce yourself and give us a bit of background?
Okay, I can. I always find it so awkward. But as Nikki said, I'm Lindiwe Hani. I am, first of all, a mother, always say, a daughter, a sister. But I think that most importantly, I'm a recovering addict. I also happen to stumble in the world of writing. So I've written a book called Being Chris Hani's Daughter, and now writing seems to be part of my life. Professionally, I'm a marketer, but I think essentially I am deep in my heart, once I break out of my fear, I am a storyteller.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, and that I can never say no to you.
Yeah, we've discussed that a long time ago.
And thank you for bribing me.
You are, like, every time I come and I do a podcast, I get really beautiful, awesome, healthy snacks. Yeah. And today I get to have cake, which is like really, really exciting.
Yeah.
So I wanted to allow you to speak about the part of your journey that has taken you down this path of reconciliation, because that's the theme, and not just reconciliation in terms of, you know, an external perspective, but an internal perspective too, because you've been on quite a journey.
I have, and I think it always, at least in my journey, it started with external. You know, I had to reconcile with everything that I believe has happened to me. You know, once when I was in rehab, when I was touching on the traumatic aspects of my life, and also what part I had to play in it. So, for example, I think only 6 years ago, that's when I started coming to terms with the death of my father and my sister. And everyone always, it sounds crazy because my dad has been gone for over 20 years. But I think I had been ducking and diving, dealing with it. And of course, self-medicating in numerous ways. So now when I finally had to face it, it broke me, you know. But that's when the journey of healing began, in a way, because once I accepted it, I finally accepted, okay, they are gone and they're never coming back. So what am I going to do? Because I don't want to play the blame game anymore. So with my dad, I decided to search and reach out to his killers.
So it's still, like, when we talk about this, it's just, you know, it's, for me, there's something, just, it's huge.
It is. I mean, I think I was actually on automatic, because I have always had a fascination, especially with the man who pulled the trigger, you know, in terms of why. So when I finally connected with him and I met with him, funny enough, I thought I'd be so angry, Nikki, but I didn't have any anger. I was now at a place where I was more curious as to why and who he was. And also, I always say that also the recovery lifestyle, look for the similarities and not the differences. So I was sitting across from this man, asking him about his childhood, because I wanted to see what we had in common. And funny enough, I found things that we had in common. I mean, he was raised in a place where his father was always being persecuted for being a businessman in a communist state, and police always coming to his house. I could relate to that. And so now going on that journey and speaking to him, I realized that this anger and this animosity and this ferocious, like, it was, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, I had made him a monster in my life. He was the one who took away everything, right? And so I had built him up in my head. And then to meet him, to realize that he's just a man. You know, he's actually a sad man, in my opinion. And I feel that having all these emotions had kept me in captivity. So once I met him and I realized there's nothing to be scared of, you know, and I let it go. And everyone always wants to know, have I forgiven him? You know, and I always say that I think it's actually a problematic thing with a lot of South Africans. It's always we either hate or we forgive. And I think it's not as black and white as that. It's not as simple as that. One doesn't necessarily lead to the other. So in my life, I haven't forgiven Walush. I don't necessarily think I'll ever forgive him, because how do you forgive someone who dismantles your entire life, so drastically? But what I've chosen to do is I've chosen to hear him out, and I've chosen to accept his apology, so that I can move on. Because the fact is that if I continue hating him, that's all that's doing is holding me captive.
Absolutely, and poisoning you.
And poisoning me. So then once I walked out of that prison, that's the first time in years I felt I can breathe. I walked out, and that was the beginning, essentially, of my life. I felt like, okay, it's done, and I didn't die, So I think that's when I realized that I can move on from my past. I can hold on to certain things, but I can let go of things that don't serve me well. Because another reason I made these decisions, because I have a daughter, and I've realized that if I continue behaving this way, because they don't do what we say, they do as we do.
I have 2 teenagers, I totally get that.
Exactly. So I realized that if she sees me angry, because I grew up seeing my mom angry all the time, you inherit that. And I wanted to stop the whole cycle of destruction in our family, and hopefully that she won't have to pick up something to cope, So I realized that if she looks at me and she sees me on this path, then she won't hold on to so much anger and hatred, So that's where it all began. So, and I think the hardest part was actually forgiving myself.
Tell me more about that.
Next, it's just so difficult to come out of rehab and look at myself in the mirror. And when I was an addict, I never looked at myself in the mirror. I was a professional at doing makeup with my eyes closed because the eye contact used to freak. I didn't like what I was looking at. So it took me a long time to look at myself in the mirror, because I felt like I was such a complete loser. I had this whole family history and this father, and he said father figure, but he was actually my father, who everyone hero worshipped. And I always felt that there were these expectations on me to be like Chris Hani, and I felt so short of that, and I felt so ashamed, and I felt I'd wasted so much time, and I was a horrible, useless user. I couldn't even stop. Why did I pick up drugs in the first place? I couldn't stop drugs, all those kind of things. I was ugly, I was this, I was that. So it was a lot of self-hatred that was happening, which makes sense because of being an active addiction. But even coming out and looking around at my peers who didn't go the drug route, or the addiction route. And then, from the outside, their lives are seemingly perfect. And you look at yourself and you feel like you've done nothing.
I suppose that's the risk that we all fall into through comparisons.
Yeah, which is what we're warned not to do. But the thing is, it's taken me years now. I mean, now I'm at a place where when I look at my life, I look at it with such joy and accomplishment. And I realize that I'm where I'm supposed to be at the right time. And now I have just come to terms, you can even say reconciled, with the fact that I am the most powerful I've ever been. And this is just the beginning of my journey, I have nothing to be ashamed of, because every shameful thing that I did in my past, I have worked through. I have asked for forgiveness to those I had to ask for forgiveness for. And I have turned my life around, and when I look at my relationship with my daughter, that just even drives the point home, that I've turned my life completely around.
I was just thinking, when I first met you, your story owned you. And part of your empowerment and getting to this place of just taking your life in a direction that you wanted to go is because you've owned your story. And I think it's a big reason why I do these podcasts and why it's so important for people to talk about their story, because otherwise we live almost in the shadow of it. and we lost. I mean, that's certainly how I experienced you when I first met you. And every single decision that you've taken in order to like tell the story from your perspective, what was your experience like? I think that that's a huge part of reconciling with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it was very important to me when I left rehab that no one defines me. And I remember walking out and saying that I'm going to own this recovering addict. You know, when people say, where have you been or why are you not drinking? I will tell them I'm a recovering addict because I felt that for so many years with the secrets, you know, and how secrets keep you sick. And that was my entire life, just always being so secretive and feeling so ashamed all the time. But the more and more I kept on saying, I'm a recovering addict, and owned it, Nikki, the freer I became, you know. And when I owned my story, no one could make me feel ashamed about it, you know, because I was very proud of the fact that I was a recovering addict, you know. And I think you're absolutely right about that I chose to not let anyone tell my story for me, you know. And as painful as it was, and as hard as it was, because people do look at you differently, I think that it has weeded out the people who are not meant to be in my life. And it has solidified the relationships that are meant to be there, you know. So, I don't know. I think it is part of that whole reconciling your past with your present and knowing when to let go of the past, you know, because I know my past doesn't serve me well. And there are always people you meet who always want to remind you about it, you know? They'll always want to remind you about your worst possible moment in life. And I've realized those are the people who don't want to see you grow.
And I think they're probably stuck in those moments in their own life too.
Yeah.
So it's quite painful for them as well.
It is.
And to see you grow reminds them maybe of their stuckness.
Possibly, but it's crazy. But I mean, it is, I don't know. I always say that I don't think I'll ever understand this whole journey or completely get it. But what I've made the decision to do is that I'm going to enjoy it.
Hallelujah.
You know, I'm going to enjoy it and I'm not going to obsess about it. You know, because that's also one of my favorite things to do is to sit there and obsess and pick apart. Now I've learned, and do you know what the other thing is that I've learned to do? Is I've learned to say thank you. You know, before when, like, for example, after I wrote my book next and stuff, I still wasn't happy, remember? I still felt that I haven't done anything. You know, I didn't feel like a complete person. I was always searching for something.
Sure.
I needed something more. I needed something bigger. I wanted all the pieces to fall into place at the time I wanted them to fall into place. But that's not how life works. And so once I learned to also sit and stand still and just say, okay, gratitude. Thank you. And then things started to fall into place.
How much of that gratitude do you give to yourself? You know, it's one thing to kind of be grateful for situations or experiences or people in our lives. But for me, you're the hero in your story. You know, your dad might have been the hero in his story, but you've lived your own life and this is your story. And how much of that appreciation and gratitude do you land up giving to you?
I battle.
That's what I'm asking.
I battle with that. You know, I'm still incredibly uncomfortable with compliments. You know, when someone pays me a compliment, I'm like, shut up. You know, it's like my whole body actually reacts like, stop it. I mean, making me uncomfortable. And it's very difficult for myself to say, well done, Lindy. You know, I always say, no, I'm sure I'll see it when the whole thing is done. But really.
That makes me feel sad.
I know.
Because, like, I've watched your entire journey up until this point, and I won't forget that day when you and I were sitting and having coffee and cake. Actually, when you were like, you had achieved so much already. And besides just staying clean, the book was finished, you know, you were looking at doing the next book and what the next chapter in your story was going to be. And there was this, like, heaviness, a sadness about you. And like if we take stock, if we just take a pause and we look about from where we were to where we currently are. I mean, we're not denying that there's still a journey ahead of us, but I mean, you've traveled like thousands of kilometers from where you were. You know, even when I think you lost your job initially, when you just came out of treatment, and it was so scary. You didn't know how you were going to take care of you and your daughter, and seeing you now, you know, you love your job, you love your place, you've got clarity and direction, you've got so many projects on the go. And for you not to appreciate that about yourself, because you've created that.
I know. But I don't know, Nikki, it feels like, not even that I am my biggest critic, which I am, you know, but you're absolutely right that I need to do that more often, but it's almost a fear of, if I say, you've done well, Lindy, maybe I'll relax, you know, then I won't push myself as hard to keep going, which is, as I'm saying it sounds ridiculous, but it is that thing that I need to keep going until I get, and even when I get to that certain point, there'll always be a point further, you know, and it's funny because I never say, thank you, Lindy, or well done, Lindy. I'm always thanking my higher power. So I always say thank you to my higher power for walking this journey with me, for protecting me, for loving me. And I realize, as I'm saying this now, light bulb moment, is that as much as, yes, my higher power is there, I'm the one who's also been holding my own hand, walking myself through this journey, you know? But it doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come naturally to me to be like, okay, well done. But the other day I actually did sit when I was in therapy, my therapy session, and I said that as much as I still call myself a work in progress, you know, but I did acknowledge how far I have come, and which is amazing, you know, and I feel it more, especially with the way I connect with people, the way that I relate to people. That's when I really see my growth. You know, I don't really see it with the accomplishments per se, but I see it with my interactions with people I love. And also, like the scary steps, Nikki, that I thought I'd never take. Like now, even contemplating getting into a relationship, you know, or...
So excited about that.
It scares the crap out of me, you know, that days that I just want to run into a hole and hide. But for me to fully embrace life, it's part of the things that I have to do, you know. And listen, okay, I'm saying it like it's a chore. I'm enjoying the feelings and I'm loving the thing, but you know how I love to have everything in place, you know? I love to have everything already in place, and I need to know what's happening. And you know, with relationships, you never freaking know, you know, because there's always that factor of the other person, you know.
That just sucks. If they could just do what they're told.
If they would just do what I want them to do, everything would be fantastic. But they don't. So it's the unknown. It's the unknown. And that, when I look at that, and I'm just like, Jesus, I've grown, you know, because a few years ago it wouldn't have come to that.
How long have I known you?
6 years.
6 years, and we've been having this relationship conversation for quite a number of them, actually.
For like 4 of them.
And I think that part of that, appreciating yourself and trusting yourself and knowing that you are the one that made these decisions. Your higher power might have like opened doors for you, but you were the one that had to walk through them. And so you can trust that whatever unfolds, you know, if this relationship is successful or unsuccessful, that you can handle whatever it is that you need to. And like, I just think every part of your story, even coming into rehab to writing your book, you met with resistance like on every possible corner that you could, and you just kept going.
The majority of that resistance came from me. I mean, the majority of it was like, it was always me, and that's why I think the narrative has changed. Now every project that I remember, even with the book, and even initially coming out of rehab, I was the one who was like, I'm not sure if I can do it. I don't think I can do it. I'm scared to do it. But now, yes, I'm still scared to do things, but I'd say things like, I'm going to do it. You can do it. So I think that's where I tend to appreciate myself more, that I've seen my worth and I've seen what I can do. So now, when new projects come, it doesn't come from a place of fear anymore. You know, that will always be lingering, but it's not the same fear that used to paralyze me. You know, I think it's becoming a bit more healthier in a way. Mm-hmm. But now it's like this thing next that I feel like there's really nothing that I cannot do if I put my mind to it.
I know that. I hope you know that.
Now I know that. Now I know that, and it's so empowering.
Sure.
You know?
You know, when you're telling me how much you're writing and the effort that you put in with the book, and I've just got this epiphany that the next part of your self-reconciliation maybe is jumping from being the author of the story to being in the story. Like, to give yourself permission to experience life to the absolute fullest, mm-hmm. no matter what risk is involved with that. I think she's having a piece of cake so that she doesn't have to even go there with me.
I think baby steps. I mean, I'm going to do it. I mean, listen, I'm turning 40 in December. So it's part of this whole thing. You know, I did well before lockdown. I had a whole 40 things to do before turning 40. I didn't know that 6 months of it would be wearing tights and pajama pants, you know. But I accomplished that with grace. But, you know, like, first of all, I never thought I'd reach 40. I really never thought I'd reach 40. I thought that I'd be dead by then. And it was unimaginable. But as it's coming closer and closer, I have this whole, I can't wait. I can't wait because in every single decade, like my 20s were crazy, my 30s were, at least half of my 30s were manic. Now I feel like with 40, this is the part where I'm actually going to experience life on not only life's terms but my own terms.
Absolutely.
You know, and making decisions that are going to benefit my happiness. Like, it was so ridiculous, Nick, that before entering rehab and also up until 3 years ago, I didn't know what happiness felt like. So from the time that Dad died, which is 12, until then, I didn't know what happiness was. You know, I knew how to laugh and, you know, have fun. But in terms of self-fulfillment, joy within myself, and happiness, I didn't know. I remember waking up one day and thought, geez, I'm actually happy. And it was in lockdown. You know, like, lockdown, I think, has been the most important year of my life. You know, I understand that it has been very traumatic for the world. It has, and people have gone through the worst, and there have been so many deaths. But mixed personally, this has been the most phenomenal year in terms of my growth and my journey. You know, it's where I wrote more. As I said, I contributed 2 stories. I spent quality time with my child. I realized that her elevator doesn't go to the penthouse.
Not yet.
You know, that she's a little crazy. I keep saying to her, I think we need to go see someone about you, you know. But she's so interesting, and she's so funny, and she's so insightful, and she's kind. And I knew all these things, but I've been experiencing them, you know, in terms of the way we deal with each other. So that was a great gift, because I think if lockdown hadn't happened, she'd just be all over the place, going out. And my job has been great. And I finally started the documentary that I was speaking about for a year. And I fell in lust. And I'm still writing, and I'm turning 40. And, you know, it's just and. And I've been offered an opportunity to climb Kilimanjaro.
That's so cool.
How awesome. I might die, but how great. So I feel like once I actually, to bring it back to reconciliation, you know, it always begins with forgiving, letting go, you know. And that's what happened to me. I forgave myself.
That's beautiful.
I let go of my pain, you know, and I embraced everything that had to come. And now this woman who sits before you today is the best she's ever been. And it's just the beginning. So
I'm so grateful and glad that I get to catch up with you today, because we do this intermittently, and I get to kind of see the progress because I don't see you all that often. And this reconciliation with yourself just allows those opportunities to reconcile with your daughter and with every other element of your life, and also that she doesn't have to be passed on with that anger and the hatred that you were held hostage by. Now there's freedom.
There's freedom, and once you open yourself up to that that's when things start coming in. Because I think when you're in a dark space or in an angry space or in a place where you don't feel like you are worthy of anything good, you'll not receive anything good. Once you choose to think of yourself as this, I want to say superhuman, because that's the term that I've started to adopt when I think about my capabilities. I'm like, you're superhuman, you can do this. And it doesn't mean that I don't have faults or I'm not vulnerable. I believe that I'm actually superhuman because of my vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Those are the things that make me superhuman. And those are the things that I embrace. So instead of always looking at my vulnerabilities as negatives, I actually think it's what makes Lindiwe who she is.
And I couldn't have thought of a better way to end this than exactly that. And I just, please, let me be part of the rest of your journey.
You absolutely are.
Cool.
Just keep bringing cake.